The news bombs just keep on dropping. Anyways, welcome back, true believers and all you spectacular Spidey fans, to another very exciting episode of Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales 101. So you already know the drill, Spidey Squad, is that with another day does in fact come another amount of amazing coverage from both Game Informer and Insomniac Games. And on top of that, we also got some further extended footage which does take place at the very beginning of the game between the encounter with Miles, Peter, and Rhino. Not to mention that we also received some very insightful information which was provided directly by Eurogamer, breaking down some new gameplay details that will be featured in Miles Morales. But just to give you a brief heads up in advance, the new footage that you are about to see does show a pretty lengthy amount of the entire section of the beginning of Miles Morales' game. And alongside of that, we also have even more Daily Bugle articles, which do take time to further deepen the overall world of Marvel's New York that Insomniac is continuing to expand within Miles Morales' game, as well as finally introduces a core character that heavily relates to Miles Morales as a whole and may potentially be the main antagonist of the entire game. And even though absolutely none of this is going to ruin the main plot of Miles Morales at all, I just wanted to give you all that brief spoiler warning just so that way you're prepared ahead of time. But to begin with the breakdown, let's start off with the Daily Bugle. So yesterday, Insomniac did decide to release their third and final promotional video relating to the very entertaining Miles Morales text exchanges, where the first video did relate to a conversation between Miles and Peter, and the second video related to a conversation between Miles and Genki. But as for the third video, we did receive a very wholesome exchange in Spanglish between Miles and his mom, Rio Morales. However, the most important element that we can take away from this video is actually who's appearing within Miles' contact info, where of course we do see the usual suspects at the beginning of the contact list with Miles' mom Rio, Peter Parker, and Miles' best friend Genki Lee. But after those three, this is where the contact list starts to get really exciting, because right underneath Genki, we do see a contact listed directly for none other than Gloria, who, if you recall, was one of the main residents of the Feast Shelter within Spider-Man PS4. And in fact, we actually saw her reappear briefly within the Miles Morales gameplay demo. So even though Gloria didn't have the biggest connection to Miles that we saw in Spider-Man PS4, I do think that her inclusion in Miles' contact info does indicate that we might potentially be interacting with her a bit more within Miles' own game. Considering the extremely wholesome moments that did take place within Spider-Man PS4 between Peter and Gloria whenever you decided to visit the Feast Shelter on your own free time, this certainly makes me extremely happy just to simply see more of Gloria's character in action within the Marvel Spider-Man universe. And as for whether or not this might potentially mean that we could be spending more time within the Feast Shelter as Miles when he is out of the Spider-Man costume, we will just have to wait and see. But if that actually ends up happening, I will still be immensely excited nonetheless. Now moving on to the other two contacts that were featured in his phone, we also have Miles' abuela, which if you don't know is Spanish for grandmother. And shockingly enough, her first name does turn out to be Gloria as well. So even though her name is listed within Miles' contacts, but we don't actually have a profile picture of her whatsoever, I do think it's safe to say that Insomniac simply included her name within Miles' contact info as a small cameo, but that we won't actually see her as a full character within the main game. Regardless, I still think that's a very nice touch that Insomniac incorporated within the game in order to try and fully flesh out the broader scope of Miles' family. And obviously that is most definitely the case when it does come to the final contact that we do see in Miles' phone, which of course is who I assume is going to be the main antagonist of the entire game, none other than Miles' uncle, Aaron Davis. So if you do recall, Aaron Davis was actually previously leaked a few months ago by none other than Miles Morales himself, Najee Jeter, who was quickly name dropped by Najee, who was trying to record lines for Miles Morales. But now we do actually have our first full look of Aaron Davis within the Marvel Spider-Man universe. And even though we're currently unaware as to what type of relationship Miles and Aaron have with each other, I still think their dynamic is going to be very interesting to explore once we do play the full narrative for ourselves. But as for whether or not Aaron Davis actually ends up turning into the Prowler within Miles Morales' game, I think it's safe to say that Insomniac is planning to keep that a surprise by the time we fully play through the game in its entirety. And based on all the narrative insights that we have received for the game thus far, this story is surely shaping up to be something truly special. And speaking of the story, we yet again have two sensational Daily Bugle articles which do break down the overall progress that Rio Morales is making in her city council campaign, as well as getting a closer look as to what exactly Miles is up to while he's trying to become his own unique Spider-Man. Whereas the article states, ready, set, debate. Rio Morales lands a KO as she spars with other council candidates during debate, where the story was written by Kat Farrell and photos by Sean Besman. We've reached a critical phase in the city council elections as debates heat up. The latest saw Rio Morales steal the spotlight from her opponent. She pressed her opponent for his plans on safeguarding East Harlem from Roxxon, to which her adversary's response defaulted to the quote-unquote incredible future Roxxon's new form would ensure the neighborhood. Unsatisfied, Morales again pressed the other candidate for whether he truly thought Roxxon's move was a peaceful community alliance rather than a hostile corporate takeover. With no immediate rebuttal, Morales landed the final blow by questioning his insight into the neighborhood, and whether he was truly in touch with the people who call East Harlem home. Now, even though it hasn't been officially confirmed yet as to who exactly Rio's opposing adversary is on the city council candidates, I do think a safe bet to make, especially since he was brought up in one of the previous Daily Bugle articles, is none other than the main head of Roxxon himself, of Simon Krieger, who, if you don't know, seems like he's going to be a pretty prominent character within the game's story, considering the fact that he is voiced by none other than Troy Baker. This also further implies the overall amount of importance that Roxxon is going to have in the core story. And knowing that the new high-tech criminal army of the Underground as well as Roxxon are going to be tied into a turf war with one another, Miles is certainly going to have his hands full while he is swinging around the city as our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. But luckily, even with all the craziness that is occurring within the city, Miles still has the time to try and help his fellow citizens, given the fact that this Daily Bugle article does go over Citizen Spider. Spidey's new partner is our favorite new neighbor. And of course, in classic Daily Bugle fashion, the story was written by none other than Robbie Robertson with photos by Lance Bannon. And as the article describes with a very wholesome screenshot to accompany it, the new Spider-Man has shown he's eager to be not just a crime fighter, but a hero of the people's day-to-day issues. He's often been clocked swinging from East Harlem to Midtown, assisting first responders and chasing down lost pets, fully living up to the title of Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. While he's certainly shown he's getting better at being a superhero, Spidey's new partner has proven he's also the humble hero, here to not only protect, but really serve the people of New York City. And based on everything that Miles is going to be doing to help the people of New York City, I am 110% sure that these are all absolutely heroic acts that even Peter Parker himself would be proud of. Especially given all of that spectacular new Rhino footage that you just saw, Miles is surely doing everything in his power in order to try and live up to the expectations that Peter Parker has set for him. And simply being able to witness the heroics of Miles in action, from stylishly swinging throughout New York City in a very inexperienced manner, to flat out saving babies from harm's way and straight up punching Rhino directly in the face, the essential pure and unrelenting heart as to what exactly makes Spider-Man so special is definitely front and center within Miles' character. And if that's everything that's being established for Miles' character at the beginning of the game, I for one can't wait to see where he's going to turn up by the end of the game's story. So if all that new footage as well as those Daily Bugle articles were somehow not enough to get you excited, then maybe these brand new details from Eurogamer will, where in case you missed it, the creative director and game director of Miles Morales, mainly with that of Brian Horton and Cameron Christian, did partake in a fresh interview with Eurogamer which did break down some very insightful information as to specific gameplay mechanics that are going to be incorporated in Miles Morales. And out of everything that's actually been revealed today, this easily has me the most hyped. For starters, both Brian and Cameron did make it very clear during the interview that they are doing their absolute best to fully go above and beyond the limitations as to what they set forth with their first game of Marvel's Spider-Man on PlayStation 4. Meaning that for Miles Morales, and of course once we inevitably receive the official sequel of Marvel's Spider-Man 2, they are completely trying to innovate the gameplay formula that we have seen previously. And for the case of Miles Morales, this directly relates to two specific factors, one of which is side missions and the other one relates to air tricks. And to briefly paraphrase the direct statements that both Brian and Cameron made during the interview, they essentially said that the side missions within Miles Morales are going to contain better amounts of world building as well as have multiple chapters. So basically, this does mean that Miles Morales' side missions are going to have a lot more layers than what we experienced in Spider-Man PS4. Considering the fact that Miles Morales is also going to be a shorter game in comparison to Spider-Man PS4, it's really nice to know that the plethora of side activities that we can experience in Miles Morales are going to feel a lot more fleshed out. However, the main gameplay mechanic, which does seem to be the most fleshed out within Miles Morales, is actually relating to the air tricks, where in this case, Brian and Cameron did make it extremely clear that they are going to fully deepen the overall air air trick system that was incorporated in Spider-Man PS4. And in fact, they are going to completely double down on all of the manual air tricks that you can control for Miles while swinging throughout the city. Insomniac really wanted to incorporate a bigger sense of style and flair when it does come to the overall traversal that will be incorporated in Miles' game. And what better way to do that than by adding on some brand new and truly astonishing air tricks within Miles' overall playstyle. For me personally, there's nothing that I love more within open world Spider-Man games than the inclusion of controllable air tricks. And knowing that Insomniac is bringing them back in spades within Miles Morales' game simply brings a tear to my eye. But alas, with all the massive amounts of hype that are currently surrounding Miles Morales, there is one slight bit of news that may disappoint you all in regards to the remaster of Marvel's Spider-Man on PlayStation 5. Now, if you remember for Marvel's Spider-Man Remaster, as well as what has been recently confirmed for Spider-Man PS4, is that Insomniac are indeed going to include 3 brand new costumes which will be added upon Spider-Man's suit collection. And even though we're currently unaware as to what the other 2 costumes are going to be, we do know that one suit in particular is going to be none other than the Amazing Spider-Man 1 movie outfit. And in a shocking turn of events, where the majority of the Spidey community did theorize that this was essentially going to be an Amazing Spider-Man movie suit pack, where we were going to receive the Amazing Spider-Man 1 Vigilante suit, the Amazing Spider-Man 1 main suit, as well as the Amazing Spider-Man 2 suit, that has sadly been recently confirmed to not be the case for one of those particular costumes. Where fellow Twitter user and massive Spidey fan Speed Force Nation did ask Insomniac Games community director James Stevenson on Twitter, will the suit from the Amazing Spider-Man 2 be in Spider-Man Remastered as well? And clear as day, James Stevenson directly replied by saying,
"Hell no."
So while I'm sure this is a massive punch to the gut for all you Amazing Spider-Man 2 fans out there, at the very least we are going to receive the suit from the first movie. And while the other 2 suits still remain a mystery as of right now, I'm sure we'll end up learning more about them, as well as the second pre-order suit from Miles Morales in due time. But for now, we'll just have to wait and see. And with all that news said, everyone, that's the video I have for you today, and please let me know all your thoughts in the comments section down below. What do you think about all this crazy new footage and gameplay details that we did receive for Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, and which tidbit of info are you the most excited for? Again, the main traversal that is being inputted into Miles that we have seen so far looks absolutely outstanding. And knowing that Insomniac is going to be including controllable air tricks on top of all that is just a dream come true. But until the next news update, everyone, thank you all so much for watching. Stay spectacular, Spidey fans. Feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you did enjoy. And without further ado, peace out.
He's a menace. Too soft. He's a low-energy menace. Too easy. Maybe he's a weak-minded. Oh!
Hey, Jonah! Looking good! Very festive!
Menace! A feckless, treacherous, unhinged menace!